now. I want to hold you in my arms again. I want to do the little things we used to do before. Honey, I can't live without you anymore. I won't be satisfied until you're by my side. Oh, how I'm yearning for that moment when I'll say hello, I'll see you smile, I'll hold you in my arms again.
So quite often the accusation is, basically, Mr. Kane, you just want everybody to get married. Well, no, I don't. What I want to do is, for couples that choose to marry, for couples that make that as a choice, what we want to do is just support them in that. You know, any couple that walk up the aisle together or go to the registry office, they're making a life choice, they're making a positive decision. In front of all their friends and neighbours, they're saying, we believe in the dream here, we want to make it happen. And so the whole idea of the project of Marriage Week is that what we do is we get alongside those couples who have already made that as a choice, and we say, how can we support you in that? I remember a friend of mine split up from his wife, and when I asked him, I said, how come you're splitting up from your wife? What's the problem? Are you arguing a lot? Is that there's somebody else involved? He just kind of scratched his head and said, no. I said, well, what's the problem? And he said, well, we just seem to have drifted apart. And I said, help me explain. You've had a big wedding, you walked up the aisle, everybody was there. What do you mean you drifted apart? He said, well, other things have squeezed in, like other priorities like children and housing and careers and other things that were all important and good. And I just thought about this for a while, and I thought, this is tragic, really. What's happened here is that this couple have just forgotten why they fell in love in the first place. And what needs to happen for couples like this is we need to do sort of an aid memoir to the nation once a year to say, hold on a minute, if you're fortunate enough to be in a marriage, then you should look after it. Over the years, people have quite often asked me, well, Mr. Kane, you must have the perfect marriage. You're the man behind National Marriage Week. And yes, I do. I do have the perfect marriage. If you understand, a perfect marriage is a marriage where you understand you're going to bump into each other from time to time, in which case you're going to have to forgive each other, and that your marriage is a learning process, that you're prepared to learn things about each other, and you see it as a skill that you kind of have to appropriate. So the same way as you have to learn to become an accountant, or you have to learn to drive a car, I have to learn to be a good husband, and my wife has to learn to be a good wife, and that's the metaphor of our marriage.
Marriage is a learning curve, that's for sure. You need to find out things that actually can improve it. If you do kind of learn how to communicate better, if you learn how to love your husband or your wife in the way that they appreciate, then you can actually make your marriage much more fulfilling.
Is it a perfect marriage? Yes, it is, because we forgive each other and we're on a learning curve. And if you acknowledge that and accept that, you can have a perfect marriage too. I can remember one year I got a phone call. It was a pre-interview interview from one of the major agencies in the UK, a news agency. And they were asking me, what's Marriage Week all about? Why do we need a Marriage Week? Just the usual kind of questions, as you might imagine. And it was almost a weird kind of moment. It's like the interviewer, the researcher, she seemed to lean into the phone a little bit, and she said, help me, Mr. Kane. She said, is the idea that you want to get everybody in the country talking about what do you have to do to have a great relationship? And I said, well, yes, I suppose it is really. She said, well, I need to tell you, it's a fantastic success. Because she said, all morning in the newsroom, that's all we've been speaking about. We've just been talking about what do you need to do to have a happy marriage. It's great. Well, this year in the world, 664,000 people turned up at a Marriage Week event somewhere in the world, which is pretty good. But if you go a bit deeper, you say, well, how do you know it works? Well, you don't really know, because the orientation of the project is it's a primary preventative campaign. So what we're trying to do is just to stimulate the nation's couples to think about what you have to do to have a happy marriage, how to have a healthy marriage, what it means to have an unhealthy marriage, and just try to adjust thinking a little bit, to shift people's understanding and perception of what marriage is all about a little bit. So is it any good? Does it work? Well, I think the world's a better place because it has a marriage week. What does that mean in real terms? It means, well, for instance, this year 664,000 people turned up at a marriage week event somewhere in the world. So we want to see that double and quadruple and become compounded, so it becomes a global kind of a movement of people that are not precious and all pompous and pious, but just understand that, if I want to have a healthy marriage, I've got to invest in it, and one of the best ways to invest in it is to go to a marriage week event and learn something once a year. That's what I do. That's what everybody ought to do.
I want to say hello, I want to see you smile, I want to hold you in my arms again. I want to do the little things we used to do before. Honey, I can't live without you anymore. I won't be satisfied until you're by my side. Oh, how I'm yearning for that moment when I'll say hello, I'll see you smile, I'll hold you in my arms again. I'll say hello, I'll see you smile, I'll hold you